All right, so we're going to get started now. It's a little bit after time, but that's okay. We'll get started. So again, good evening, everybody. In my new glasses, my other glasses. So we're at workshop number 16. Tonight is the Orla Yud Chet of Cheshvan. So that's tonight, the 18th of Cheshvan, Tafshin Pei Hey. And we're going to start our third session in this topic that we've been covering in Likutei Moharan number 1, which I'm calling finding favor in the eyes of God and man. But really, I mean, that's not exactly what Rabbi Nachman calls it, but it doesn't much matter. It's a theme that I'm trying to bring out as we go through the topic. Now, since we have some new people on board, I think it's worth giving a short summary, and always nice to have a short summary anyway, just to kind of get us all back in the game, as we say, and get our heads back into place. So in the first two sessions, we covered, well, obviously the very beginning of Likutei Moharan, Torah Aleph, which says something very profound, which starts off by saying, if we want our prayers and our bakashot, our requests, to be accepted to whomever they're addressed, meaning to Hashem and to man, hence the title, this is finding favor in the eyes of God and man. But even we learn that we actually can extend it to malachim if we're, prophets, because we see that actually in the Torah. But we'll just say that we're not that level, and we're not actually asking malachim for requests. We're just usually asking Hashem, and we're asking people. So if we want our requests and our prayers to Hashem and requests, let's say, to man, to be received and to be accepted favorably, then what we need to acquire this attribute, an attribute known as chen. Now, chen, usually translated as grace, can also be translated as favor, but it can also be understood in a more broader context, meaning elegance and beauty. In other words, if somebody would look at you and they would say, wow, there's such beauty and such elegance there. I want to hear what they have to say. I want to see what I can do for them, and so forth and so on. That attribute is called chen, and it's really made up of two components, which is what we've covered so far. So the two components are obviously represented by the two letters of chen, the chet and the nun. And we learned that Rabbi Nachman teaches that the chet corresponds to the attribute of chokhmah, which is wisdom, divine wisdom, which is learning to see Hashem's handiwork, his wisdom, his seichel in everything. Even something as mundane as an ant or a flower, and even as grand as maybe a galaxy. But the point is to learn, just to look into everything deeply and to see chokhmah, divine chokhmah, and seichel, which we call like a supernal intelligence in everything that Hashem makes. So, for example, like we have a cup of water here. So if I hadn't made a bracha yet on that, when I make the bracha, I should be thinking about why I'm making the bracha, who made the water, what the bracha is doing, what the purpose of the water is in my life, and so on and so forth. And if you want to get more kind of like scientific-y about it, then you can think about things like what are the properties of water and how do those properties, help the body, and how amazing is water, and so on and so on. But we're all at different levels, and we all will look at things according to our level, to our capability and our capacity. That's the idea of chokhmah. And as we learn, again, just to review, that chokhmah is one of the highest sefirot. Right underneath Keter, chokhmah corresponds to the brain on the right side. And it's a very, very high sefira. It's one of the what's called mochin, one of the brains. And it's really above our understanding. How do we know it's above our understanding? Because chokhmah comes first, and then bina comes second. And bina is on the left side, and bina is usually what we call understanding. If you can understand something, that's called bina. Well, chokhmah is actually above bina. So really, this kind of chokhmah is not something that you can even necessarily understand or you can arrive at on your own through your own logic. It's actually above all that. which makes it really only attainable through some type of nace, which we're going to learn is through learning Torah. But the problem with Chokhmah, Kilu, the problem of having that attribute of the chet is that it's likened to the sun. Remember that? It's likened to the sun. And it's so bright, which is Hashem's Chokhmah, it's so bright that we looked at it directly, we would go blind. And in other words, our own seichel cannot handle it because it's just too much. Hashem's light is infinite. We're just like finite little creatures. We can't handle the infinite light of the Ein Sof. So this is the inherent problem in the chet, in the chokhmah of chen. We need this attribute, but there's a problem in acquiring it. So what do we learn? How do we acquire it? We have to acquire also the attribute of the nun. Once we acquire the attribute of the nun, then we have the chet and the nun, and then we have the word chen. So what is the nun? Remember, the nun corresponds to the last sphere, which is the sphere of malchut. Now, just like Chokhmah is filled with light, that's so bright that really almost any vessel cannot handle it unless it's diminished somehow. It's just the opposite with Malchut. Malchut is likened to the moon. The moon is no light in and of itself at all. The moon is just a reflective mirror. That's all it really is. But what does the moon do? The moon is able to reflect the light of the sun, but only if it has no light in and of itself. If the moon is light in and of itself, then it's not going to be able to reflect light coming at it because it's going to be shining itself. So the attribute of Malchut is such that it has to empty itself of any of its inherent light. And in fact, on the level of the Sefirot, Malchut doesn't have any light in and of itself. It's literally just a kli without any inherent light in it, which is unique amongst all the other Sefirot. Like all the other Sefirot are characterized by both having light and a vessel, except for Malchut, the bottom. Malchut doesn't have any light. It just has the vessel. So where does it get its light from? From the spheres that come down through all the levels, finally through the sphere of Yesod. And when Yichud takes place, then Malchut receives the light. So this is what we have to be. This is what we have to become. To acquire the attribute of the nun, we need to empty ourselves of our own sake. We have to be willing to say, I don't know anything. And this is what we learned a couple of weeks ago as well. The Rebbe Nachman says one of the most important things that we need to learn is that we don't know anything. The first aspect of knowing is to realize that we know nothing. If we can arrive at that level, we've arrived at a very, very high level. The problem is it's very difficult to arrive at that level because most of the time we think, oh, I know this and I know this and I know this. But this is an aspect of arrogance, really, quite frankly. So a real, truly humble person, and I'm not saying I'm at this level at all. I'm just saying this is what Rebbe Nachman teaches, and it's the goal that we have to aspire to. Or truly wise and a humble person says, I don't know anything. I'm an empty vessel with no light in and of itself. All that there is here is just a reflective surface that reflects the light of the sun. And that's those people that can do that acquire that level, are called tzaddikim. And we would aspire to be a tzaddik someday, for sure. But that's what we need to do in order to become, in order to acquire the aspect of chen. When we can acquire the aspect of chen, both the chet, which is chokhmah, and the nun, which is malchut, we can acquire those together and we can bring them down together. Then we rectify the flaw in the moon. Remember that? We learned about this tremendous medrash that's brought down in Masechet Chulin, page 60. It talks about in the very beginning, Hashem made two great lights. But right away, in the exact same pasuk, the very next few words says, one light was big and one light was small. One light was great and one light was lesser, not so great. So how can that be? You just finished telling me that you made two great lights, and then right afterwards you tell me one was great and one was not so great. So this is this famous medrash that says that the moon said to Hashem, how can two kings make use out of one crown? And so Hashem says, good point. Shkoyach, I hadn't thought of that, Kilu. So you go diminish yourself, moon. So what does this mean? So we've been explaining what it means. We're not talking about the physical lights that we call the sun and the moon. We're talking about these sphera. We're talking about Chokhmah and Malchut, right? That in the very beginning, there was the sun and the moon, and they were together. And as a result, the moon was able to reflect the light of the sun perfectly. So there was total, complete yichud between the sun and the moon. This is the aspect of chen. This is what we have to aspire to, what we need to acquire. But in the beginning, Malchut said, "Wait a second, I got this big light." So Hashem says, you have to get rid of that light. And now you have to learn how to bring the two of you guys together. And when you bring the two of you guys together so that there's yichud between the moon and the sun, then what happens? Then the light of the moon becomes like the light of the sun. And now there's really equality, but it's only when the moon, or when the attribute of Malchut was able to learn to diminish itself and empty itself and become like nothing, what we call aim. That basically bittul. Bittul is another way that we can look at that. You realize I'm nothing. When I'm faced with the light of Hashem, I'm nothing. So in summary, that was a bit of a long summary, but hopefully it was useful for the newcomers. That Rabbi Nachman, in summary, is teaching us a lot of different aspects here, but he's teaching us fundamentally that if we want our prayers to be accepted, we need to acquire the light of the sun. We need to acquire the chokhmah, which comes from learning Torah b'koach, and we can only really truly acquire it when we make ourselves into nothing. And this is the aspect of David and Melech. It's the aspect of Mashiach, because David says, "I need tolat beloish." I'm just a worm. I'm not even a man. This is also the aspect of Avram Avinu, who says, "Ani afar ve'efer." I'm just dirt and ashes. This is all these same aspects. These great tzaddikim literally emptied themselves of their own ego, and they said, "I'm nothing." So if we can learn to acquire that, then we can have this attribute of chen, and as a result, our prayers will be more amazingly accepted, and they'll be very, very readily answered. Now you may say, "Well, that's going to take my whole life to do that." Yeah, it very well may. And you may not get it done either by the time that you completely are a niftar from this world. But that's okay. As long as we're making progress at it, all the better. Because what's happening, every time we're able to make progress at this aspect of acquiring some of the light of the sun, and a little bit of the light, like in the early morning when it's not so bright, we can acquire a little bit, right? And then we can diminish ourselves a little bit more. We learn to get rid of our ego. We learn to get rid of our arrogance. Slowly, we can bring these two aspects together, and then slowly, our prayers become more chashuv, more important, and more readily accepted in the eyes of those that we make petitions to. So it's a process. It's not an all or nothing thing. It's one step at a time. And that was the pasuk that we read about even the tzaddikim. How do they acquire the light of the sun? We learn little bit by little bit by little bit. That's how a tzaddik becomes a tzaddik. He's not born a tzaddik. He slowly acquires one step at a time. All right. That now takes us to our source material for today. So before we go forward, we'll just pause and let anybody ask any question if there's anything that's not clear at this point.
Yeah. So maybe I can ask you to send the 2 recordings of the first 2 sessions with the source material, and I'll try catch it up. What you spoke about the chen.
Yeah. Okay. They're on the YouTube channel, but remind me and I'll send you a link in the WhatsApp feed for you later.
And it's got the source material as well that I can print out.
Not on the YouTube channel, but I'll send it to you separately.
Okay.
Okay. So now we're going to read the first paragraph. So this just says Likutei Moharan Aleph, and it's just a continuation of where we ended off in session 2. V'tzari kol echad liten koach lebichinat malchut de kedusha. Every person has got to give power, give strength to the aspect of the malchut of kedusha. And this is what we've been talking about all so far. This is the attribute of the noon. We have to learn to give strength to that malchut, give strength to that sphera. What does that even mean? How do you give strength to a sphera? Seems so very esoteric and difficult to understand. We'll see on a practical level how we do it. Lit gaber al malchut besitr achra. Now this is something we learned last time. translated just means to basically fight a war and to overcome the Malchut on the other side, right? So we learn, what do we learn? We learn there's really two Malchuts, right? For everything that Hashem created on the side of Kedusha, he created a corresponding thing on the side of the Sitra Achra. This comes from a pasuk in Kohelet, that basically everything that Hashem made, he made a corresponding thing on the other side, for good and for bad. So just like there's a sphere of Malchut on the side of Kedusha, there's also a sphere of Malchut on the side of the Klipa, on the side of the Sitra Achra. And each of these two Malchuts, basically, there's a war between the two of them on an ongoing basis. And the whole question is, what's going to rule? What's going to rule up in the higher worlds, and what's going to rule down in the lower worlds down here, and what's going to even rule within our own life, within our own mind? That war goes on. That battle never ends. Even if one day you manage to defeat the Malchut on the Sitra Achra in a certain battle, shkoyach, but the next day he's going to be strengthened back again. He's going to come at you again. The battle will never end in this world. And so what Rabbi Nachman is telling us is we have to give strength and power to the Malchut on the good side so that it can fight the battle against the Malchut on the bad side. Now, on another aspect, this means, because he talked about this before, this is the battle between Yaakov and Esau, right? Yaakov corresponds to the good side, and Esau obviously corresponds to the bad side, and they're constantly at war with each other. We're going to look at this as we go on, and we're going to see it explained more fully. This is the battle, and he's telling us we have to fight this battle. Now, another way that we can understand this, and maybe language we're more familiar with, is the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Ra. Right? We all know these phrases. The Yetzer Tov, the good inclination. What is it? What is it? It's the Malchut, the sphere of Malchut on the side of good. That's what it is. Which is another way of saying it. It's the Shechina. The Yetzer Tov is the Shechina. It's the Malchut of Kedusha. And therefore, what is the Yetzer Ra? It's the Malchut of the Sitra Achra, which we learn corresponds to Lily, right? And she's the mother of the Erev Ra. But that's another topic, but we did mention it last time. It's just good to tie it back together again. This is the fundamental war in the universe between these two kinds of Malchut. And he says we have to strengthen our side, the good side, so that it can defeat the bad side. Let's go on. Just like Chazal say, and he partially quotes here from Masechet Berachot, page 5. Let's read the quote, which is in Likutei Moharan. It says, Le'olam yargiz Adam Yetzer Tov al Yetzer Ha-Ra. So it's exactly what we've just been saying. All the time, a person has got to basically agitate himself and fight, get angry, use his Yetzer Ha in the good way and fight a battle against the Yetzer Ha. The fact that Rabbi Nachman quotes this after just talking about Malchut, the Kedusha, and Malchut, the Sitra Achra, tells us that these two Malchuyot correspond to the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Ha. There's the proof for it. Now, let's go down to a little bit farther down on your page, where I brought that entire Gemara down for us so we can look at it more carefully, because Rabbi Nachman just quotes that one little piece and expects you to know the rest of it. So let's look at the rest of it. Okay, so this is like 4 paragraphs down, where it says Berachot 5a. Amar Rabbi Levi, Baracham. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Shimon ben Lakish, he's what we normally refer to as Reish Lakish. And by the way, Reish Lakish is an amazing individual. He used to be a thug and a criminal, right, and a murderer, and so on, and he became one of the greatest Amoraim that ever lived. So if somebody is, there's hope for us. We mess up. Sometimes
that's exactly what you just said. You take Reish Lakish as a powerful evil force, and on the flip side, he becomes a powerful positive force.
Very good. Exactly. 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 Now, that whole topic is another one indeed, and there's a lot of things that we can go off into tangents about that one. But I don't want to go there too much. I want us to think about one thing, and that is one of the which is again what we learned a number of weeks ago. But you weren't with us at the time, Moshe. But we learned that one of the best way, in fact, the only real way today to help people to overcome their own Yetzer Ra in them and to help them to do tshuva is to think of their good points, right? To look and focus and to speak out the nukudot tovot in everybody. And when that happens, when we do that, we actually wake up their spirit of slumber and help them to transfer them from the scale of demerits onto the scale of merits. Maybe that was going on in the case of Reish Lakish. Maybe somebody was praying about him and saying how all these good points about him, even when he was a murderer and a thug. Okay, anyway, that's a separate point, but I wanted to bring it in because it's something that we did talk about in some previous classes. Well, let's go on. So what is this teaching of Reish Lakish? Leolam Yergiz Adam Yetzer Tov Al Yetzer Ra. That's the quote that Rabbi Nachman just said. That all the time a person has got to fight, right, against the Yetzer Ra with his Yetzer Tov. How do we know this? How do we know this? We have a pasuk in Tehillim, verse 5 of chapter 4. To the backward, it should be chapter 4, verse 5. And by the way, if you're used to saying the Shema Alamita before you go to bed, then you'll recognize this pasuk because this is part of the whole seder of saying the Shema before you go to bed. Rigazu al techatahu. No, this is the same word. Rigazu. And a rigazu or rogez, the same root, resh gimel zayin, means kind of to be angry, but it can also mean to be agitated. And so here it means rigazu al techatahu. Get yourself all agitated and start fighting against the Yetzer Ha-Ra so that you don't sin. Im nitzcho mutav. If you're able to defeat it and be victorious, good. Shkoyach. V'im lav. And if you're not able to, what do? Just give up? No. Yasok b'Torah. Get involved in learning Torah. How do we know this? Because the next words in the pasuk say, Shneimar, this exact same pasuk, Imru v'levavchem. In other words, speak out from your own heart. What are you speaking out from your own heart? You're saying the Shema before you go to bed. And you're thinking and talking about words of Torah from your own heart that you put there. Remember, there's a pasuk somewhere, I forget where it is, and Tehillim, David Melech says that I think about your Torah. Why? Because I put your Torah into my heart. So when we put the Torah into our heart, we can speak out the Torah that's in our heart, even though we don't have a sefer in front of us. If you're able to defeat it, be victorious, great. Shkoyach. If that doesn't work, V'im lav yikra kriyas Shema. That's why we say the Shema at nighttime. Shneimar, as the rest of the pasuk says, al mishkavchem, on your beds. Im nitzcho mutav. If you defeat it, great. V'im lav. Well, now what are you supposed to do? Yizkor lo yom hamita. You should think the fact that someday you're going to die. How do we know that? Because the rest of the pasuk says, Shemar v'domu sela, and be silent. So when you're silent, it's like being dead. So really, it's an amazing drasha. Reish Lakish basically made this amazing drasha on this one pasuk that he thinks is a pretty simple pasuk, and he drives this entire teaching with this one pasuk. One step at a time, you're attacked by the Yetzer Ha-Ra, and he's giving you step by step approach on how to defeat it. So this is what Rabbi Nachman is teaching. And he's basically teaching, let's go back now to the top paragraph. What he's telling us is that we have to fight this war all the time. There's no, we have our soldiers that have to be going up into Lebanon, they're going to Gaza, wherever else they're going that we don't know about. And sometimes they get a furlough, right? They get off and they get to go home for the weekend, or they get to go home for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, hopefully forever. So, but that's not the case here, right? This war is all the time, constantly, and it never ends. So it can get tiring. So you have to renew yourself every single day. We say this in the Shema, that Hashem renews all of creation every single day, right? We say that in the brachas of the Shema before we say the Shema in the morning. That Hashem is machadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh breshit. That Hashem renews everything in His creation every single day. Why? What? Why does He need to do that? It's like, and then it says, like He makes all those great lights every single day. So Hashem remakes the sun and the moon and the galaxies every day. That's very nice. But so what? Why does He need to bother? Just made it once and to be done with it. Why does He need to renew everything every single day? Because He's trying to tell you. It says that Hashem, He was Machadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh breshit. And what is included in Maaseh Breshit? You and me. We're part of that creation. Therefore, Hashem renews us every day. That's the point of the teaching. And since Hashem renews us every day, when we wake up after a sleep, we've been renewed. And that means that we can refight the battle that we ended the previous night. We don't get tired. That's why you sleep. The purpose of sleep, one purpose, is to renew your strength so that you can come back into the battle and keep fighting. All right. Where are we? We're in the top paragraph. Still, we haven't made it past about the third line. Here we go. The third line. Valide ma noten koach lemalchut de kedusha. And through what? This question. And through what does somebody give power to the malchut of kedusha that we've been talking about? What is it? Yetzer Ha-Torah. Through the Torah, which we already kind of said, but now he just spells it out. By learning Torah b'koach, this is how we primarily give power to the malchut of kedusha in order to give it the strength it needs to fight and defeat the malchut of the Sitra Achra, which is Esav, and Esav's ministering angel, who is the suffering. Shehu osek b'koach. That's what he says there. I'm reading from the text. Torah shehu osek b'koach. We have to learn Torah b'koach. And what does it mean to learn Torah b'koach? It means different things. But fundamentally, the best way to do it, I'm not trying to say this in any way to make anybody feel bad, chas v'shalom. But the best way to learn Torah b'koach is to get up at the point of chatzot and learn through the rest of the night. That is the most powerful, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why that's the most powerful way. I realize that many people have a very difficult time doing that because of the schedules and the necessity for people to work and so on and so on. There's no criticism being said. I'm just simply saying that's the most powerful way to learn Torah b'koach. However, if you're not able to do that for whatever reason, then you should strive always to learn Torah lishma at least, which means you just learn Torah just for the sake of learning Torah. How can you do that? Pick something you're not even interested in. That's a good way, right? Pick something you're not interested in whatsoever, and now you're going to learn this. I said, why are you learning? Lishma. I'm just learning this Torah because Dafka, it's Torah, and I'm trying to do it Lishma. If you're always only learning things that you enjoy, it's really kind of hard to learn Lishma. That's another thing. So, and if you can't learn Torah Lishma, you haven't arrived at that level yet, all the time, which none of us, let's say, be honest, I haven't anyway. I have not achieved in my lifetime yet. Then at least we want to. That's also learning Torah b'koach. If we can learn Torah and yet we're not quite at the level of Lishma, but we want to be at the level of Lishma. It's in our thoughts. It's part of our kavanah. That's also a very good thing. And another way to learn Torah b'koach is any time we learn Torah with Mesirut Nefesh, with some form of self-sacrifice, that's also learning Torah b'koach. So, for example, let's say you're tired. End of the day, you had a long day, you're tired, you just want to go to bed. So you take 5 minutes, your eyes are ready to shut. But no, I'm going to strengthen myself for 5 minutes to learn Torah. That's a tremendous amount of Mesirut Nefesh. It really is. And by doing that, you're learning Torah b'koach. And that's giving strength to the malchut of Kedusha. It really is. So anytime when you can learn with Mesirut Nefesh, this is also a good way to learn Torah b'koach. Whenever we're learning Torah and we got our coffee there and we're schmoozing, it's not so much b'koach. We got to be honest. We always do these things, but we have to strive to whatever the next level is in our own life. All right, let's go on. He says there, Kamosh Amru Raboteno Zichron Livcha, just like our rabbis of blessed memory said, Sham over there, that he just quoted, Leolam Yargiz Bechula, which is what we just read from Berachot. Okay. E azil mutav. So just saying, if it leaves, if the Yetzer Ha leaves you, like you get the feed, he runs off, with his tail between his legs, then mutav, good for you. You won a battle. But remember, just because you won a battle doesn't mean you won the war yet. Vim lav yasok betar. And if it didn't leave you, and it's still there, then it's time to immerse yourself in. Now he's going to bring on another aspect of this. So let's go on and see this other one. This is from Masechet Kiddushin. Ukamosh Amaru Rabotenu Zichron Livracha. Another Chazal in Kiddushin, page 30b. So you can look these up on your own later if you want to. Im paga b'chat menuval zeh. If this degenerate meets you, encounters you, the degenerate obviously is the Sitra Achra, or you could say any of the Sitra Achra's minions, including his cohort, his female counterpart. Right? She's also part of the Sitra Achra. So if this Menuval meets up with you, mashchehu lebeit hamidrash, drag him into the base midrash. So now let's go down to that. I brought us that quotation on the bottom of the page. That's from Kiddushin Lamed Amid Bey. So Tana Dvei Rabbi Yishmael, the very bottom of the page is the second bottom line. So it was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael, B'ni, my son, im paga b'cha menuval zeh, if this degenerate one encounters you, mashchehu levet hamidrash. So that's the quote that Rabbi Nachman said. Great. Now then we just have a little bit more of what that actual Gemara says. Im evenhu nimoach. If it comes at you like a stone, and a stone is something that just doesn't seem to want to move, there's no way you're going to be able to move it. It's there, and he stuck himself in your living room, Kilo, and there's no way you're going to get rid of it. Then what? It'll melt. How will it melt? It'll melt by you learning Torah. The Torah is like water. The water will wash it. And let's remember, like Rabbi Akiva, the famous story about Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, he's like, he didn't know much until he was like 40 years old. I think he started to learn the Aleph when he was like 40 years old. And so, how am I ever going to change? Like, what do you expect of me, Hashem? And he saw, when he went out, he saw this little drip, 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 drip on these rocks. And he saw in the rock, there was like a little hole being bored out. Okay. And so Rabbi Akiva realized, wow, if water can bore a hole in a rock, then there's hope for me. And so this is what's being expressed here. Im evenhu nimoach. It'll melt. It'll melt with the water of the Torah. Vim barzelhu. And if it comes at you like with like iron, meaning like war, it's coming with a big iron mallet of some type or a sword that's coming to attack you. It's not just sitting there getting your way, whatever it's doing as like a rock, but it's coming at you like with barzel. Then it says meat potses. It'll get shattered. All right. How do we know that's going to get shattered? Shinemar, we have a pasuk from Yirmiyahu in chapter 23 that says, "Hello, kol devari ka'esh nu Hashem." Isn't my word like fire? Says Hashem. Ucha patish yifotzeitz sela, and like a hammer that smashes a rock. You see, so this is this idea that Hashem's word is like a hammer that can smash the rock, and it can basically, what else can it do? It can also be like fire as well, which can also burn up things like stubble and so on. Im evenhu, going on with the rest of the quote from Kiddushin, im evenhu nimoach. That's what we already learned. If it comes at you like a stone, it'll melt. We have a pasuk that talks about that in Yeshayahu chapter 55, verse 1. Hoi, call tzemei. Like hoi, I don't really know what hoi means. Anyway, like I don't know. Hi, all you. Hey, it's like you're saying, hey, everybody, all you who are thirsty, l'chu l'mayim, come to the water. What's the water? The water is the Torah. What is the thirst? The thirst is the fact that people know that they're empty. People know that there's something missing in their lives. They know it. If they were to take just stock for a few minutes and turn off all the machines and turn off all the screens and stop going to work 15 hours a day, if they just were just like go out into the field where it's quiet, look up at the stars at nighttime, nobody else is around, and just be alone with yourself and Hashem, everybody knows that they're thirsty. They just want to ignore it because they're chasing something that they think is more important. But anyway, this is what's going to happen. This is the waters of the Torah, and in my opinion, it's also the waters of Rabbeinu, and it's also the waters of Breslov Chassidut in general. This is the water, and this is the water. It's like a mikveh. It's like a mikveh, and that come to the water, come into the mikveh, and receive some type of purity, some type of tahara, cleanliness. The Omer, we have another passage from Eov that says the same thing about the power of water. Avanim shachaku mayim, which is stones get worn away with water. And and we're not talking about real stones. The Torah is not here to teach us about biology or geology. It's here to teach us about spirituality. So at whatever level. So this is what Rabbi Nachman is teaching, and this is the first paragraph. Now let's go back. Let's kind of try to move a little bit quicker. Now we're almost done already because we already actually covered most of the stuff on the bottom of the page. Now in the second paragraph on the top, Ki al Likutei Torah noten koach l'malchut Kiddushin, which is what we've been saying. By learning Torah, b'koach, which is what he said in the previous paragraph, somebody gives power, gives strength to the malchut of Kedusha, which is now we also learn is another way of saying the Yetzer Ha-Tov. V'azai mekabelet malchut, and now the sphere of malchut receives shehu b'chinat nun. It is the aspect of nun, which is what we talked about at the beginning as review. It's the aspect of nun. What does this aspect of malchut receive? Chiyut mina chokhmah. It receives life force itself, vitality and life, to be real alive. It receives that from chokhmah, which is the chet. Shehi bichinat chet. That's what it says there. So when he's explaining exactly how it is that this malchut, which is supposed to be us, our attribute of malchut, how does our attribute of malchut get strengthened? How is it able to receive this chokhmah that's so high and lofty and way above us, like the light of the sun that would blind us, and we're incapable of actually handling it? How do we do it? By humbling ourselves and emptying ourselves like the moon. But he says when that happens, when you're able to get that light from chokhmah and to have it reside in malchut, then malchut, which is the Yetzer Tov, gets strengthened. Well, how is it getting strength from? It's getting strength from the light of chokhmah that enters it. And now it's got power. Now it's malchut with power, and that power in malchut has got strength to the Yetzer Tov. And now it can go ahead and it can fight and defeat the Yetzer Ha-Ra. And going on, v'nit chaber, v'nit kasher ha-chet v'hanun. What we've been talking about. By doing this, you're able to tie together and connect the aspect of the chet with the aspect of the nun, and that's the word chen. To explain it to you what it is, all these psukim that talk about, if I have found chen in your eyes, then please answer my request. Right? It's I don't know how many dozens of times throughout the Torah and Nach as a whole, we see this expression. If I have found favor in your eyes, O king, or if I have found favor in your eyes, so and so and so and so, then please listen to my request and grant it. What are they saying? Do I look good? If I look good to you, then please answer me. I put a nice dress, I put a nice suit, put a tie on, it look good. No, they're saying if my Torah learning was truly the right way with koach, and that I learned to humble myself in the face of Hashem, which is malchut, then I've acquired, and to whatever degree I've done that, I've acquired this aspect of chen. That's what this person is saying. Saying, if I have found chen in your eyes, if in fact I've been successful at my job and learning Torah and being humble and emptying myself of all of my so-called ego and all of my so-called light that I think I have and all of my so-called intelligence, if I've been doing that right, then that's what they're asking. If I have found pain in your eyes, if when you look at me, you see that chen, that I've been successful, then what do we say? Then please answer my request. This is what exactly is how it happens. It's not just magic. You just go up saying you up somebody and say, oh, if I find favor in your eyes, please grant me my request. And say, I think you're a jerk. I don't mean find favor in your eyes. I don't like you at all. How do we switch that? So in part, we're going to learn about this next class, B'ezras Hashem. Exactly. All we've been focusing so far is what we do ourselves. But there's another side to it, which is what has to happen in that other person. Because we can turn ourselves into this attribute of chen, but if the other person doesn't also become a fitting vessel to like receive that chen, well, then it's also not going to happen. So there is these two sides to it, and we're going to get into that B'ezras Hashem next class. But at least we introduced the idea. So now what does Rabbi Nachman say at the end of this second paragraph? He says, V'na'aseh or halabanak or hachama, which is again what we talked about at the beginning by way of review. When we do this, we make the light of the moon like the light of the sun. And that's Kiddush Levana. Every single month we go out there, we look at the moon barely beginning. What are we doing? This is what we're doing. We're talking about this very Indian right here. We're talking about learning to humble ourselves, to become like the moon. And what does the moon do? It starts off small. It's the new moon, like the bolad, you can't even see it at all. It's completely dark, totally dark. There's no light, big cloud. That's exactly what we're supposed to be. Just like that. And then what happened? Slowly during the month, we're supposed to be acquiring some light of the sun so that it reflects off the moon. And more the moon shines, more the moon shines. Eventually, you get the full moon and it's all shining. Well, it's even more than that, what Rabbi Nachman is talking about here, because the actual pagam in the moon has to be repaired totally, where the entire moon itself is just like the light of the sun. And that only happens when it's complete yichud. And by the way, that's never happened yet, totally, since the creation of the world. This is really the object of creation, is to repair this flaw in the moon. And this is why we connect Kiddush Levana to David HaMelech, who's Mashiach, because it's Mashiach's job to bring this kind of yichud into the world, this total yichud, when the light of the moon will truly become like the light of the sun. All right, third paragraph. K'shezeh kam. Now, when this one rises, zeh nofel, the other one falls. And he's been talking about these two aspects of malchut, right? He's been talking about the Yetzer Ha-Tov, the Yetzer Ha-Tov over here and the Yetzer Ha-Ra over here, which is the malchut of Kedusha and the malchut of the Yetzer Ha-Ra. So now he says, when one of them rises, the other one falls. They're like a seesaw, right? If one goes up, then by definition and by necessity, the other one has to go down. And if one gets strengthened, then the other one by necessity has to fall. How do we know this? Then what happens is this one falls and it nullifies the aspect of the evil malchut, which is the Yetzer Ha-Ra. How do we know? Let's see. Let's drop down to the second page and the last section there, which is a pasuk from Berachot, because although Rabbi Nachman doesn't exactly quote it here, I thought he did, but apparently he doesn't. He only references it and he expects you to know. So what is he talking about? He's talking about this pasuk in Berachot chapter 25, verse 23, which says, Vayomer Hashem law. This is when Rivka realized that she was pregnant with twins, right? And she went to the yeshiva of Shem and Eber, and she asked, I think it was Shem, what's going on here? I feel these two different forces at work inside of me. And Hashem answered her through the prophet Shem. So this is what this is. Vayomar Hashem, I think Shem. I don't know what I said exactly, but anyway, Hashem answered her through the prophet Shem, not Hashem. Okay. So Vayomar Hashem La Shnei Goyim Bevitnek. There are two nations inside of your womb. Ushnei Leumim Mi Me'ayich Yipredu. And there's two nations inside of you that will be separate from each other. Ul'om mil'om yamatz. We'll explain that phrase in a second. But it really means, and to this nation from the other nation. In other words, what one gains, when one nation gains, it gets it from the other one. L'om mil'om yamatz. One will be strengthened from the other one. Virav Yavod, sorry, no, the older one, which is Esau, will end up serving the younger one, who's Yaakov. Now, look what Rashi says in the next two lines. Ushnei Lu'umin, these two nations. Ein La'om, this word La'om, which is used in this pasuk, he says, Ein La'om Ela Malchut. Yeah, you got to think sometimes, like, Rashi didn't have access. He didn't have access to, as far as we know, he didn't have access to the Zohar, and yet his profound understanding of very profound, deep Kabbalistic stuff oftentimes emerges, and this is an example of that. He said right here that this word L'om only means Malchut. What's he talking about? He's talking about governance, but he's talking about the sphere of Malchut as well. Obviously, it's the same thing. And he's saying that, and so now he's telling us this pasuk, which is the way Rabbi Nachman is now referring to, he's telling us about this. When one is strengthened, the other one falls. These are the two malchuts. When one malchut, which is one la'om, represented by Yaakov, when it goes up, is strengthened because of learning Torah and so forth, then the other one, the other la'om, the other malchut, falls, which is Esau. That's what he tells us right there. And that's the very last Rashi there on the page. Lo yishvu begedula. There will not be equal in strength and power and might. They will not. Kishazekam ze nofel. When one goes up and rises, stands, the other one falls. Now, let's go back to Rabbi Nachman and just wrap up, because this is exactly what Rabbi Nachman is saying in this Torah here. Now, we're in the third paragraph, the beginning again, back to where we started. Kishazekam zenofel. Right? He's basically quoting. He's quoting.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, just to get a little bit political, but even the Arabs say themselves, when we are strong, they are weak. And when we are weak, like with the 6th of October, they were strong. But they're not Asa, they're Ishmael.
Yeah. Well, it's the same principle holds true no matter where we look. No matter where we look in the world, whatever force of good there is, if it's strengthened, the forces of evil around it will weaken, and vice versa. Doesn't matter. It's a principle, is a valid principle, and your point is a very good one. So now let's go back to this third paragraph and wrap it up. That's what happens. The Malchut of Rasha, the evil Malchut, will fall and be wiped out, canceled. Meet Batel will be just literally canceled out. Kamosha Katuv, we have a pasuk in Hosea. So a little call out for Hosea, the prophet. Not Hosea, the shoemaker, but Hosea, the prophet. We have the pasuk in chapter 14. Ki Yisharim Darchei Hashem. The ways of Hashem are straight, are upright. Right? Tzadikim Yelchu Bam. And the righteous people, they walk on those ways. Uposhim Yikashru Bam. And the criminals or the sinners, they stumble on those ways. So what's he talking about? Let's explain it. Hainu, that is to say, Al Lidei Darchei Hashem, through the ways of Hashem. Hainu HaTorah. He's telling us what are the ways of Hashem. That means Torah. Al Lidei Zeh, through Torah, HaTzadikim She'devekim B'malchut the Kedusha, the Tzadikim who are glued and cleave to the Malchut of Kedusha, Hem Nit Chazkim U'Makabalim Koach Al Lidei Zeh. They get strengthened. This is what he's been saying all along. They get strengthened and they receive power, strength and power through this. Through what? Through learning Torah. So they don't stumble. Uposhim Yikashru Bam. That's the rest of the pasuk. The sinners or the criminals, also type of sinners, will stumble. They're going to fall over the place. Bechinat Malchut Rasha. That's the aspect of the Malchut of Rasha, the evil Malchut. Bechinat Yetzer Ha-Ra. Once again, he tells us explicitly that the shira of Malchut is the Yetzer, It's either Yetzer Ha-Tov or Yetzer Ha-Ra, depending on which side of the fence of Malchut we're talking about. Shinofel, v'nichna al Torah, that this Yetzer Ha-Ra, we want the only way to defeat the Yetzer Ha-Ra, the only way to defeat it, and for it to be subdued, is through learning Torah b'koach. That's it. Now that basically takes us to, I think, a very nice semi-conclusion, at least up to this point. We've had now 3 of these classes talking about this very point. And you go back if you haven't heard class part 1 and part 2, we'll get you a link so you can go ahead and you can get them under your belt. But in review, really, it's quite simple. There's a couple basic principles. Number 1, in and of ourselves, we have no power within us to defeat or to fight against the Yetzer Ha-Ra. It's way too powerful for us. Hashem gave us this gift called the Torah. He gave us this gift called the Torah, and he says there in the Gemara that the Torah is an antidote. It's medicine that's able to, and in fact, it's the only medicine that's able to defeat the Yetzer Ha-Ra. There's no other medicine. There's no other Yetzer. There's nothing else. You can try all the different schemes in the world. None of it's going to work. The only way to give power and strength to the only thing that can fight the Yetzer Ha-Ra, which is the Malchut of the Sitra, the only way that you can fight against Malchut is with Malchut. That's it. The Malchut, which is the Yetzer Ha-Ra, can only be fought against and defeated by another kind of Malchut, which is the Malchut of Kedusha. And the only way that that is able to do it is to receive light from Chokhmah, from the very highest of all the spheres, and to bring that light down into a vessel that's emptied itself so it can receive the light. And so really, the only way we can defeat the Yetzer Ha-Ra is by being humble, by learning how to be an anav, to get rid of gaiva, and to get rid of arrogance and all that kind of stuff, and to have this attribute I call shiflut, lowliness, to really see and to believe that everybody else is like so much better than we are. And if we were in their shoes, we would do way worse. This is the aspect of David HaMelech. This is why he says, I need tolat v'lo ish. I'm a worm, not even a man. Because he learned to look at everybody and with such admiration. Even Poshim, he learned to look at them with tremendous admiration, that even in those so-called Poshim, or we would say today, Rishaim, there's still a Nakuda of good there. And if I was in their shoes, I would even do worse than that. That's a very, very high level. And that we talked about already in a couple of classes. So if it seems a little bit bizarre to you, I understand. But we can also learn that again. We can reuse some of those teachings of Rabbi Nachman. But this is how we fight the Yetzer Ha-Ra. The Yetzer Ha-Ra is not fought and defeated by any other way at all. And so we can try to achieve this a little bit better every little day. I'm going to take a look at the chat line to see if there's anything that got popped up here. No, okay, very good. Okay. So I think that's a good place to stop. And B'ezrat Hashem, next week, we're going to continue this, unless something causes change the theme for some reason. But we want to ask the question next week. We've all been focusing so far on ourselves, right? The person making the request, that we have to acquire this attribute of chen. But we haven't yet talked about the person who we're making the request to. They have to actually be able to receive and see us with chen. And so that's also explained by Rabbi Nachman in the next part of his Torah. And B'ezrat Hashem, we'll go through that next time. Okay, any other final questions or comments by anybody?
Just remind you, send me the worksheets. I can print it out, and I'll
No
try to
worries.
and also the link to the YouTube.
I'm not going to forget you.
Okay, take it easy.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody, take good care. The next week, have yourselves a great week.